Picture the North Atlantic in the early hours before dawn, not the romantic ocean from postcards. The real one, cold, heavy, unforgiving. Somewhere out there, far from shipping lanes, far from cameras, a piece of Britain is already at work. No flags, no formation, no warning. Just a machine moving through black water, running silent, doing the one job that makes every other argument possible. Because in 2025, the United Kingdom's military power doesn't begin with parades or promises. It begins with presence, with systems that are already in place before a crisis becomes a headline. And that leads to the real question. The question isn't whether the United Kingdom is powerful. The question is where you feel it first. Under the sea, over your airspace, or inside the networks you didn't even realize were part of the battlefield. Here's what most people get wrong about the UK. They think British power is old power, a relic, a memory, a navy with traditions, an army with history. But modern British power is something else. It's compact, globally wired, and designed to plug into alliances like it was built that way from the start. In 2025, the UK is not trying to be the biggest military on Earth. It's trying to be the military that can make fast, sovereign decisions, and then execute those decisions with allies at the speed of modern war. That is a different kind of strength, and it starts with the one capability that doesn't need to fire to be effective. The UK's nuclear deterrent is the foundation stone. Since 1969, Britain has maintained what's called the continuous at-sea deterrent, meaning at least one ballistic missile submarine is always out there, always hidden, always ready. That one fact changes the math for any serious adversary, because it means you cannot remove Britain's ability to respond with a single surprise strike. Deterrence is not about using the weapon. It's about convincing someone they cannot safely gamble against it. But Britain's undersea power in 2025 is not just the nuclear mission. The Royal Navy's attack submarines are built for the first hours of a crisis, not the last. They watch, they listen, they track, they deny. And if politics collapses into violence, they can strike at distance. And now Britain is planning for the next era under the waves through the SSN AUKUS program, alongside the United States and Australia. The long-term plan points toward up to 12 new nuclear-powered attack submarines over time, built around shared technology, shared production, and shared strategic purpose. That is not a short project. That is a generational pact. Under the sea, between three democracies, designed to outlast the news cycle by decades. And there's another undersea truth most people ignore. The seabed itself is becoming contested territory. In the modern world, the ocean floor is not empty. It carries the cables that move global data. It carries the infrastructure that keeps economies breathing. So Britain has been investing in undersea monitoring and protection, including bringing RFA Proteus into service as an ocean surveillance and support platform. This is not glamorous, but it is decisive. Because in the 21st century, you don't always defeat a country by bombing it. Sometimes you destabilize it by cutting what it depends on, quietly, while everyone argues about what really happened. So that's the invisible layer of British power. Now, let's talk about the part you can actually see on a map. Because Britain didn't just build submarines and call it a day. It built the kind of capability that gives leaders options when runways are far away, permissions are uncertain, and time is running out. The United Kingdom has two large aircraft carriers, HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales. These aren't museum pieces, they're mobile air bases, and a carrier is not just a warship, it's a political statement with engines. It says, you can't block Britain by closing airspace. You can't veto British power by pressuring a host nation. Britain can bring its own runway. That matters in a world where missiles threaten fixed bases and where access is never guaranteed. But a carrier alone is a target. A carrier group is a system. And Britain's carrier concept relies on layers, escorts, submarines, logistics ships, aircraft, and, most important, networked integration with allies. The Royal Navy's Type 45 destroyers are built for air defense. Their job is to see threats early, track them fast, and protect everything around them. Then, you have the new frigate programs shaping the fleet's future. Type 26 is built around anti-submarine warfare, designed for the North Atlantic's brutal chess game beneath the waves. Type 31 is the general-purpose workhorse, built for presence missions, escort duties, maritime security, and the simple reality that if you don't have enough ships, you can't be in enough places. This is the hard lesson every Navy learns eventually. You can't surge ships from a spreadsheet. You have to build them, crew them, maintain them, and keep them ready. Now add the UK's amphibious edge. The Royal Marines have been reshaping for the future. Less about slow, massive beach landings, and more about fast, sharp raids, reconnaissance, coastal surveillance, and operations in complex shorelines. In plain language, small teams with sensors and precision, teams that move quickly, see first, and vanish before an enemy response forms. That matters in the kinds of places where the next conflict could start. Archipelagos, fjords, cluttered coastlines, narrow seas, and choke points where a small force can create a very large problem. Now look up, because air power is where British strength becomes less about size and more about speed, information, and integration. The Royal Air Force still flies Typhoon as a core fighter platform. Fast, capable, constantly upgraded. But modern air combat is not just about the jet. It's about what the jet can see, what it can share, and how fast it can turn information into decisions. This is why the F-35 is such a big deal. And in 2025, the UK made a notable move. It announced the purchase of 12 F-35A aircraft and the intention to join NATO's dual-capable aircraft nuclear mission. That matters because it adds flexibility and deepens Britain's role in NATO's deterrence posture. It also signals something important about British strategy. Britain is not only protecting itself, it is positioning itself as a central node in the wider Western system, especially when the stakes rise. But fighters are only one part of air power. If you want to understand how the UK fights in 2025, look at the aircraft that make the battle space readable. Britain operates 9 P-8 Poseidon Maritime patrol aircraft. Their mission is anti-submarine warfare, maritime surveillance, and protecting the routes that matter, especially in the North Atlantic. Then, there's airborne early warning and control, the airborne quarterback role. The UK has an order for 3 E-7 Wedgetail aircraft, intended to rebuild that capability after the retirement of older systems. And this is where reality bites. Procurement timelines slip, and 3 aircraft is not a lot. It's a reminder that high-end capability is fragile if you don't buy enough of it. Britain's answer, increasingly, is not just platforms, it's integration, connecting sensors across sea, air, land, space, and cyber, so the whole force sees one picture, not 5 separate ones. Now, let's talk about the least glamorous part of military power, the part that actually decides whether anything works beyond the first week. Logistics, transport aircraft, tankers, maintenance crews, spare parts, ammunition stockpiles. These are the things that separate a powerful military from a military that can actually sustain a serious operation. In a crisis, Britain can move quickly because it has the airlift, the refueling capability, and the expeditionary culture to deploy at speed. And when Britain deploys, it rarely deploys alone. This is one of the UK's most underrated strengths. Alliances are not decoration. They are part of the operating system. NATO, Five Eyes Intelligence Cooperation, AUKUS, and the Joint Expeditionary Force with Northern European partners. In modern war, a destroyer with friends becomes a flotilla. A fighter with allied data becomes a threat that grows faster than an enemy can react. Now we need to address the question everyone asks. What about the British Army? Yes, Britain's land forces have faced real pressure. Shrinking numbers, stretched readiness, and programs that have been delayed and criticized. But in 2025, the Army's direction is clear. It is building toward a smaller force that is more protected, more networked, and more lethal, especially in the European context, where artillery, drones, and air defense have returned to center stage. Start with protected mobility. The Boxer program is set at 623 vehicles. That's about moving troops in modern conditions, where unarmored movement is an invitation to drones and precision strikes. Then, reconnaissance. Ajax is a program for 589 vehicles, and it has been troubled, delays, criticism, and ongoing scrutiny. But the purpose is still important. Modern sensors, modern scouting, and the ability to find targets before the enemy finds you. Then there's heavy armor. Britain is upgrading 148 Challenger 2 tanks into Challenger 3. That's a smaller tank fleet than in past eras, but modernized for a battlefield. where drones hover overhead, and where survivability must be designed, not assumed. Now add air defense, because modern armies do not survive without it. Britain fields Sky Sabre, a modern ground-based air defense system built around the same missile family used in naval air defense. That's part of a wider shift in European militaries. The sky is no longer a background. It is an active threat surface, full of drones, cruise missiles, and sensors hunting anything that moves. And then there are the specialist units that operate in the gray zone. In 2025, Britain's Ranger Regiment represents a particular approach, working with partners, building capacity, shaping conflicts early, and creating dilemmas for adversaries in places that don't become headlines until suddenly they do. That's not traditional big army war. That's modern competition, where influence, training, and presence can determine whether a crisis escalates or fizzles out. So if you're looking for British land power in 2025, don't picture endless columns of tanks. Picture a force designed to reinforce allies quickly, plug into a coalition, and deliver precision and survivability in a high-threat environment. Now add air defense, because modern armies do not survive without it. Britain fields Sky Sabre, a modern ground-based air defense system built around the same missile family used in naval air defense. That's part of a wider shift in European militaries. The sky is no longer a background. It is an active threat surface, full of drones, cruise missiles, and sensors hunting anything that moves. And then there are the specialist units that operate in the gray zone. In 2025, Britain's Ranger Regiment represents a particular approach, working with partners, building capacity, shaping conflicts early, and creating dilemmas for adversaries in places that don't become headlines until suddenly they do. That's not traditional big army war. That's modern competition, where influence, training, and presence can determine whether a crisis escalates or fizzles out. So if you're looking for British land power in 2025, don't picture endless columns of tanks. Picture a force designed to reinforce allies quickly, plug into a coalition, and deliver precision and survivability in a high-threat environment. Now we reach the part of British power that most people talk about, but few understand: cyber and space. Here's the reality. In the 21st century, military power is not only what you can destroy, it's what you can disrupt. The UK's National Cyber Force exists to conduct cyber operations alongside intelligence and defense capabilities. That doesn't mean magic hacking, where a laptop wins a war. It means options. It means deception, disruption, denial, and the ability to make an enemy's systems unreliable when reliability is the difference between victory and chaos. And in space, Britain is investing in secure communications and resilient connectivity, including the Skynet program, because if your forces lose their links, they lose their coordination. In a high-end conflict, your supply lines might not be railways, they might be data, and the side that keeps its networks alive can move faster, coordinate better, and strike first with confidence. So, with all that said, how powerful is the UK military really? Here's the honest answer. Britain is extremely powerful in the ways that matter most in modern warfare: deterrence, undersea dominance, expeditionary reach, alliance integration, and information warfare. But it has constraints. Ship numbers are tight while new classes arrive. Some programs have dragged. Personnel retention and recruitment pressure is real, and high-end capability becomes brittle if stockpiles and maintenance aren't treated like strategic assets. Even Britain's most advanced systems can suffer if availability drops, if spare parts lag, or if procurement decisions create too few platforms to cover global demands. Power is not just owning a capability. Power is sustaining it under stress. Now here's the key point that ties everything together. Britain's strength is not mass. Britain's strength is choice. The UK can choose to deter with nuclear credibility that has been continuous for decades. It can choose to project air power at sea with carrier strike. It can choose to deploy aircraft and intelligence assets to reinforce NATO's front line. It can choose to shape a conflict early through partners and special operations. And it can choose to operate in the shadows of cyber and space, where outcomes are decided before the first missile is launched. And almost every one of those choices becomes stronger because Britain is not isolated. It is embedded in NATO's defense posture, in global intelligence networks, in AUKUS undersea strategy, in partnerships that turn a single British deployment into a coalition movement. So when people ask, is the UK still a major military power? The modern answer is not a simple ranking. The answer is this. In 2025, Britain is one of the few countries on Earth that can combine a continuous nuclear deterrent, advanced undersea forces, carrier aviation, frontline air power, a modernizing land force, and serious cyber capability, while operating globally through alliances that actually function in a crisis. That is not a loud kind of power. It is a disciplined kind of power. And that brings us back to where we started. In the dark Atlantic, before dawn, the most important British weapon may not be firing anything at all. It may simply be there, quietly, making the worst ideas too expensive to attempt. So the closing question is simple. In a century where surprise is cheap, distance is shrinking, and the battlefield includes cables, satellites, and code, who do you want on your side? The loudest military, or the one that shows up early, connects faster, and still has a final argument waiting beneath the waves? If you want a follow-up video, choose one: the Undersea War, the Carrier Strike Group, the RAF's future air power, or Britain's cyber playbook, because the real story of power is always hidden in the part nobody filmed.